is Radio Prague International, coming to you from the Czech capital.
Hi there, this is Radio Prague International and I'm Ian Willoughby. In today's programme, a new memorial in Madrid pays tribute to František Suchý, a remarkably brave Czech. A new online platform aims to help former Czech prisoners find their feet and avoid returning to jail. And a new Czech app should make it possible to identify dementia earlier than at present. But first, here's the news.
News.
The Czech Minister of Foreign Affairs, Petr Matsenka, says the financial consequences of funding the Czech pavilion at the World Expo in Japan's Osaka last year could threaten the future and funding of the Czech Centres network. He made the comment after a government meeting on Monday. The Czech Centres, which are run by the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, are organisationally linked to the country's Expo 2025 project, which went considerably over budget. Mr. Matsenka said his officials recorded court disputes and pre-litigation claims involving the network, amounting to tens of millions of Czech crowns. The minister previously cut funding to the Czech Centres, and the closures of some branches were announced. Czech Centres on 4 continents promote Czechia around the world. They are analogous to soft power agencies in other states, such as the British Council or the French Institutes network. The Czech President Petr Pavel says that if Czechia, continuing to not have the euro as its currency, slowed its development, it would be time to drop the country's attachment to the crown. Speaking at a conference in Prague entitled Revisa, Mr. Pavel said if the country had the euro, it would have more say in decision-making at EU level. Czechia committed to adopting the common European currency when it joined the EU in 2024. However, there is no deadline for doing so, and successive governments, including the current one, have not been minded to take that step. The Czech government is planning tax breaks for above-standard preventative medical care, Deník N reported on Monday. Critics say, however, that this will put Prime Minister Andrej Babiš in conflict of interest. He owns clinics that provide screening for early signs of cancer and other diseases, the news outlet said. At present, some health services are exempt from taxation and levies, up to a figure of 50,000 crowns a year. The Ministry of Health wants to do away with this limit for certain measures. The Czech police seized almost 86,000 products and 155 kilos of kratom in a 4-week operation aimed at curbing the illegal sale of low-potency cannabis, or CBD, and kratom, the Minister of the Interior, Lubomír Metnar, said on Monday. More than 11,000 products were ordered to be withdrawn from sale or destroyed, while the authorities closed 3 establishments and blocked 25 online stores. Under Ministry of Health plans, those aged 21 rather than 18 or over will be able to buy kratom from registered shops. The drug is not illegal in Czechia but is strictly regulated. The number of parcels transported in the Czech Republic rose by 7.5% to 342 million in 2025. That's according to data released on Monday by the Czech Telecommunications Authority. By contrast, mail delivered by Czech Post declined by over 1/4 to 218 million pieces last year, while the number of standard letters it conveyed was down by 17% to 100 million. The upward trend in parcel delivery has been attributed to increased online shopping. The sending of packages among individuals is also up, with the number of parcel lockers on Czech streets climbing by 29% last year to over 16,000. The Czech squad for the Football World Cup in North America will feature the country's youngest ever player. Sparta Prague's Hugo Sochurek, who turns 18 next week, scored on his debut a warm-up game against Kosovo in Prague on Sunday that the Czechs won 2-1, and later found out that he'd made the final 26-player squad for the tournament. And the weather forecast, it should be mainly overcast in Czechia on Tuesday with an average high temperature of 23 degrees Celsius. More cloudy weather and some rain are expected on the following days. A new memorial in Madrid pays tribute to Czech František Suchý. He was the director of Prague's Strašnice crematorium during World War II and risked his life to preserve the identities of more than 2,000 people, several of them Spanish, who were executed by the Nazis. Romana Grajcarova has more.
František Suchý, originally a landscape architect, was appointed director of Prague's Strašnice crematorium during the Nazi occupation. The Nazi authorities ordered him to dispose of the bodies of executed prisoners anonymously, without records, without names, and without any trace of their existence. Suchý refused to comply. Together with his son, František Suchý Jr., and several trusted colleagues, he secretly kept records of the victims and hid their urns in a remote part of the cemetery so they could one day be returned to their families. In doing so, he risked not only his own life, but also the lives of those closest to him, as discovery would have meant immediate execution. Thanks to his courage, the identities of around 2,200 victims were preserved, among them several Spaniards who died in the Hradištko concentration camp near Prague.
Je to příběh neskutečné důvěry v lidi a
It is a story of extraordinary trust in people and in a good cause that, when I think about it rationally, is almost impossible to comprehend, considering how much those people risked and what the consequences would have been if they'd been discovered.
A za co?
Says Czech sculptor Jakub Vlček, author of the statue of František Suchý. The monumental bronze statue is 2.5 meters tall, and with its pedestal it reaches a total height of 3.5 meters. František Suchý is depicted as a civil servant, just as he truly worked at the time. He stands with his arms outstretched, a gesture that, according to the artist, symbolizes openness, integrity, and determination. From his arms flows a relief-like veil with the faces of the victims.
Ale on zachránil tu jejich paměť. Tak pro mě
He preserved the memory of those people, and for me, memory is essentially an imprint that a person leaves in you. That is why all the victims are depicted as portraits that, on one side, protrude into space, representing how these people were seen during their lives, while on the other side there is a kind of negative form, an imprint that sinks inward, and that is exactly the memory these people left behind.
A z druhé strany je ta jejich minulost, ten jejich otisk.
The outstretched arms of the vertical lines of the portraits form a shape reminiscent of a cross. According to the artist, however, it is not a religious symbol, but a symbol of an uncompromising moral stance.
Je to o tom, že pokud bychom byli...
It is about the idea that if we were only rational and did not have some kind of moral code within us, we would behave completely differently. For me, František Suchý is an embodiment of something that far surpasses pure rationality and represents a moral pillar without compromise.
Morálním pilířem bez kompromisu.
With the unveiling of the memorial in a recreational area by the Manzanares River under the Puente de Praga, a 2-year effort by the Czech Embassy, the Madrid City Council and many others came to an end. All the Spaniards whose remains František Suchý preserved were Republicans who had fought in the civil war against Franco. After their defeat, they fled to France. There they were later arrested by Gestapo and, via German concentration camps, were transported to the then Protectorate of Bohemia and Moravia. There they were executed, often at the very end of the war. Now, symbolically, they have returned to their homeland.
That report was by Romana Grajcarova. Up to 70% of former prisoners in the Czech Republic end up returning to jail, often because they lack access to housing, work, addiction treatment, or family support after release. A new online platform launching this autumn aims to change that by connecting former inmates with organizations that can help them to rebuild their lives. Daniela Lazarova has more.
Around 10,000 people are released from Czech prisons every year. Many of them have nowhere to go, and the stigma of their past makes it difficult for them to find a job and a decent place to live. Jana, who served an 18-month sentence for property-related crimes, says that what helped her most at the outset was emotional support and acceptance.
To byli určitě lidi, At the beginning, it was so important to find people who supported me rather than judged me and who made me feel I was still a human being, that I deserved to be happy again and live a fulfilling life.
Jana's greatest challenge was overcoming her drug addiction. While still serving her sentence, she entered a treatment program in Opava.
I realized I couldn't manage my drug problem alone. In fact, I was glad I was imprisoned. While there, I was already arranging where I would go after my release, and I secured a place in a follow-up treatment center in Brno.
That helped her break the cycle. Today, she returns to prisons to help others fighting addiction. Addiction is one of the most common issues prisoners need help addressing, but there are many others, according to Jonáš Lučný of the Czech Prison Service.
Každý to má jinak, mají problémy se závislostí, mají problémy s dluhy, s financema.
Everyone's situation is different. Some struggle with addiction, debts, financial problems, or lack the work habits needed to succeed on the job market. Many also have fractured family and social ties and have nowhere to go. The first weeks after release are often decisive. If these people fail to get support at least in the basic areas of everyday life, they will almost certainly return to criminal activity.
Tak to selže 100% a vrátí se k té kriminální činnosti.
Support for released prisoners currently comes mainly from non-profit organisations. The prison service works with some of them, but its reach is uneven across the country. Most support programmes are concentrated in Prague and surrounding areas, while services remain limited in South Bohemia and South Moravia. Zuzana Tinglová, Executive Director of the Association of Organisations Working in Prison Services, says the new platform aims to change that.
Určitě platí to, že ta kapacita těch služeb je regionální.
The capacity of these services is not only highly uneven across the regions, but insufficient overall. At the same time, one of the big problems is simply a lack of information. We would like the new platform to cover the whole country and be available to family members, professionals working with clients, such as social curators, probation officers and prison staff, so they can provide effective support.
Pracovníkům věznic, aby mohli klientům vlastně efektivně pomáhat.
The website called Pro Výstup will offer a nationwide directory of services covering employment assistance, housing, debt resolution, family counselling and addiction treatment. Users will be able to search for services by location, district and available capacity. The platform is currently being tested in prisons in Břeclav, Drahonice and Příbram, with results expected by the end of the summer. It is expected to become available nationwide this autumn.
And thanks for that report, Daniela Lazarova. A team of Czech scientists has developed DigiDiadem, an app designed to help identify memory problems at an early stage. Using 10 simple voice-based tasks and AI, the system analyzes speech patterns that may indicate cognitive impairment or the onset of dementia. Vít Pohanka has more.
Začneme jednoduchou instrukcí. Budete opakovat tato trojciferná...
The application, called DigiDiadem, was unveiled at the University of West Bohemia in Pilsen. Users complete 10 simple tasks by answering questions aloud. One of the first people to try the app was Eva, who's over 8 years old.
No tak na zrak, sluch, postřeh, opakování, paměť, kognitivní schopnosti.
She says the tasks tested her vision, hearing, attention, memory and other cognitive abilities.
Mírně nad průměrem mé věkové kategorie.
She was pleased to learn that her score was above average for people in her age group. To develop the application, researchers analyzed speech samples from around 300 people. Neurologist Aleš Bartoš from Prague's Královské Vinohrady University Hospital says they compared speech patterns from healthy volunteers with those of patients suffering from memory disorders.
Tyto výsledky jsme potom použili na to, abychom aplikaci naučili, jak vypadá výsledek.
The researchers then used these results to train the system to recognize the differences between healthy speech and speech affected by cognitive impairment or dementia. The test can be taken anonymously, users respond verbally to 10 simple tasks, and the recordings are then sent to the University of West Bohemia, where they are converted into text and analyzed using AI methods.
Ten hlavní význam je v tom, že člověk se buď utvrdí, že je na tom dobře s tou pamětí, anebo naopak.
The developers stress that the app is not intended to replace a medical diagnosis. Instead, it serves as an early warning tool. The main benefit, according to neurologist Bartosz, is that users either gain reassurance that their memory is functioning properly or receive an indication that they should consult a specialist, starting with their family doctor. The project is the result of 3 years of work involving extensive data collection and technological development.
Už na tom projektu pracujeme 3 roky, kde vlastně v průběhu celého období probíhal intenzivní.
According to Luboš Schmiedl from the Department of Cybernetics at the University of West Bohemia, the original goal was to bring traditional paper-based cognitive tests into the digital age. While DigiDiadem is the latest and potentially a very valuable tool being developed in Czechia to help people with memory problems, it is only one part of a much broader effort, says Lucie Hajková of the Czech Alzheimer's Society.
Well, as a social worker at the Czech Alzheimer's Society, I consult with the families every single day. And I don't know everyone's stories, but I get a real glimpse of what people living with dementia and their families actually go through. It is absolutely true that the diagnostics have improved a lot. Clinicians have better tools and can recognize disease much earlier than the decade before. And still, in everyday reality, there are families that face some kind of barriers getting the diagnosis or proper after diagnostic support.
The next challenge is finding information and practical help.
We have the project Memory Days, where we offer free memory testing and basic counseling about getting the diagnosis. We do also have the consultation, which is kind of like social service, where we provide consultation for informal caregivers. Well, we do a lot of things, and we are also the part of Alzheimer Europe and Alzheimer Disease International, which are the umbrella organizations and movements across the globe.
So as Czech experts search for new ways to address Alzheimer's disease and other forms of dementia, they stress that technology can help, but that people and support services remain just as important.
That report is by Vít Pohanka. Last month saw the launch of Jsem tu nový, or I'm New Here, a book by the UK ambassador to Prague, Matt Field. Proceeds from the autobiography, which takes its title from a social media campaign that quickly made the freshly arrived diplomat well known here in Czechia, are going to the Pink Bubble Foundation, which helps children and young people with cancer. I spoke to Mr. Field at the presentation of the book at the British Embassy here in Prague. You were saying earlier that you were asked by a publisher to write the book, but why did you nod to that idea?
Well, my first answer was no. I didn't think I could write a book, and I didn't think, even if I wrote a book, that I could come up with something that would be interesting for people. But then we started talking about it in the embassy, started talking with the team at Euromedia, and I thought maybe there was a way to explain what diplomats and ambassadors do, to talk about the relationship between our two countries in a way that might be interesting for people. And then what really made the difference to me was when I realised that we could use this to support some good causes. And this is where Pink Bubble comes in. This is an organisation that works with children going through the most difficult times, recovering from cancer treatments. And when I realised we could do that connection as well, that we could support something that I really cared about, then the answer was yes.
How did you find the actual experience of sitting down, I presume, every day and typing away?
Yeah, so I've always loved books. I've always loved reading. Writing is a very different experience. It was tough, to be honest. It took a lot of time, especially doing this for the first time. I had a lot of help from editors, from friends, from colleagues. But by the end, I actually enjoyed it. I'm not in a rush to write another book, but I'm very glad to have written this one, and I hope people enjoy it.
I noticed the first photo in the book is from your social media campaign, Jsem tu nový, which is also the name of the new book. How much has that been a part of your life, basically, here since you've arrived?
It's been such a huge part because it got us off to such a good start. So we had a wonderful first day experience when I tried to communicate that we were open and enthusiastic, that I was really pleased to be here. I spoke Czech, and this phrase "jsem to nové," which a colleague in the embassy came up with, I think just communicates something. Of course, it's not "jsem to nový," it's "jsem to nové," and I think when we started to hear the really positive feedback from people, we got really excited about what we could do with it.
You often talk about the similarities between Czechs and Brits, but what have you learned over the years you've been here about Czechs and about the relationship Czechs have with your country?
I start this job, I feel, with a huge advantage in that Czechs and Brits have been working together for as long as we've had history together, for as long as we've been countries together. So you can think about whether it's Czechs who flew and fought with the RAF during the Second World War. You can think about the relationship between Masaryk and colleagues in London. You can think about during the communist years when British academics would come in, sneak into the country, teach in secret this underground university. The relationship between Havel and Prince Charles, now King Charles. This is all a big advantage, I think, for someone doing this job. And then today, I really feel that the interest that we have in each other's countries, whether it's Brits drinking Czech beers or Czech players winning at Wimbledon, people in this country who love British shows like Red Dwarf and Miranda, people in the UK who are passionate about Kafka and Kundera, we have a lot of kind of shared DNA, and I think that really helps.
Is there any one thing you feel like you've learned about the Czechs?
So many things. I love the dark sense of humour because I think that's quite natural to us Brits as well. So we're always suspicious of people who take themselves too seriously, and I think that's why the humour translates very well. So you can watch Zimmerman in English, you can watch Red Dwarf in Czech, the humour just translates really well. I do think the Czechs could maybe be a little bit more confident in their own story as well. This is a country that has enormous things going for it, and so maybe a little bit more confidence, that would be my main request.
Has the fact you brought out this book during your last year led to people already starting to think of you in the past tense? For example, the magazine Reflex had the headline, "Goodbye, Česko."
Yeah, I felt that was a little early, but equally I understand, of course. And I knew from the very first day that I would be leaving. It's a mission with a finite amount of time. We'll come to the end of our 4 years. We'll be sorry to leave, but we'll also leave knowing that this was always the plan. I still got 7-8 months left. I'm not slowing down. If anything, I'll be accelerating right towards the end. So I have a lot of things I want to do, but yeah, we're not at the end just yet.
And my final question, how do you think it's actually going to feel packing up your stuff here in this amazing building, the British Embassy in Prague?
I wish I could take this with me. This is one of the things that I'll miss the most. So clearly, it's an amazing resource we have here, and we try to make the most of it. But we're used to leaving. We're used to saying goodbye and taking it with us, and taking those relationships and keeping in touch. So we'll be sorry to say goodbye, but it won't be the end.
And I'm afraid that's all we have time for today on Radio Prague International. From me, Ian Willoughby, thank you very much for joining us, and speak to you again very soon.